The silence of the screaming statue. Chapter 1. The Whispering Pines. The wind howled through the skeletal pines, their needles sharp against the fading light. Sarah hunched deeper into her worn jacket, its thin wool a poor shield against the bone-chilling bite of the mountain air. Beside her, her brother, Ben, whistled nonchalantly, a tune swallowed whole by the desolate expanse before them. They were lost. Not hopelessly, not yet. But the map Sarah clutched, the one she'd sworn was reliable, now seemed a cruel joke. The barely discernible path promised a shortcut, a way to shave hours off their trek back to civilization. Now, after hours of following a winding deer trail instead of the marked route, it was clear they were hopelessly off course. The mountains wore a cloak of deepening twilight. The sun, a dying ember on the horizon, cast long, skeletal shadows that danced and writhed like skeletal fingers reaching from unseen graves. The silence, broken only by the wind's mournful cry, pressed down on them like a suffocating weight. "Hey, relax," Ben nudged her, his smile easy, despite the deepening worry lines on his usually carefree brow. "We'll find our way. Look, there." He pointed towards a distant silhouette, a lone cabin nestled amidst the trees. Shelter for the night, easy as that. Relief washed over Sarah, momentarily erasing the gnawing fear in her gut. A cabin, any sign of habitation, was a beacon in this desolate wilderness. They quickened their pace, following the faint, almost non-existent trail in the gathering darkness. As they approached, Sarah noticed something unsettling. The cabin, built of dark, weathered wood, seemed to sag inwards, its windows like vacant eyes staring out at the encroaching night. They reached the porch, its boards creaking ominously under their weight. Ben reached out to knock, his hand hovering over the rough-hewn wood. "Wait," Sarah whispered, a cold dread slithering down her spine. Before she could voice her unease, a raspy voice, ancient and laced with a chilling tremor, echoed from within. "Lost, are you? Come in, come in. You look weary, travelers." Hesitantly, they exchanged a glance. Ben, ever the optimist, shrugged. "Looks like our lucky night." He pushed open the creaking door, a gust of stale air swirling around them, carrying the faintest scent of something decayed and forgotten. The darkness inside was absolute. Sarah fumbled with her lighter, its tiny flame revealing a cramped interior. Dust motes danced in the feeble light, swirling like restless spirits. The air hung heavy, thick with the smell of damp earth and something else, something unidentifiable that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. The voice, closer now, seemed to emanate from the inky shadows at the back of the room. "Welcome, children. Come, sit by the fire. You must be cold." A single log sputtered in the hearth, casting grotesque shadows on the walls. Ben, ever the brave one, stepped forward, his shadow leaping and distorting on the uneven stone wall. Sarah held back, her heart pounding like a trapped bird against her ribs. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling. Silence. Then, a slow, chilling rasp, closer this time. "We've been waiting for you." The log in the fire flickered, casting grotesque shadows that writhed and danced like tortured souls. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Dark. The voice fell silent, leaving an unsettling void in its wake. Sarah's hand tightened around the lighter, its flame casting grotesque shadows that writhed on the wall. "Ben, maybe we should leave," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. But Ben was gone. Panic clawed at her throat. Had he stepped further into the darkness? Or a floorboard creaked from the back of the room. Sarah spun around, her heart hammering against her ribs. In the flickering light, she saw a figure, tall and gaunt, shrouded in shadow. "Who are you?" she choked out, her voice barely a whisper. The figure tilted its head, and a skeletal hand emerged from the darkness, its fingers long and unnatural. As it reached towards the flickering fire, the stench of decay intensified. Terror seized Sarah. She knew then, with a chilling certainty, that this was no living man. This was something ancient, something evil. But before she could react, a blood-curdling scream pierced the silence. It was Ben's voice, filled with raw terror. "Sarah, help!" Fear momentarily paralyzed her, but the primal urge to protect her brother surged through her. She lunged for the door, but a bony hand clamped onto her arm, a grip cold and inhumanly strong. "Where do you think you're going, child?" the raspy voice hissed in her ear. "You'll never leave these whispering pines." Chapter 3: Clawing at Darkness. The scream that tore through the cabin ripped a fresh gash of terror into Sarah's already frayed nerves. It was a primal sound, a desperate plea for help, cut short with a chilling finality. Ben was gone. The skeletal hand holding her arm tightened, its touch like ice against her skin. The figure, still shrouded in darkness, loomed over her, its rank odor filling her lungs and constricting her breathing. "Don't worry, child," the raspy voice crooned, sending shivers down her spine. "Your brother is safe, for now." Sarah wanted to scream, to fight back, but a primal terror had her rooted to the spot. The enormity of her situation, the crushing isolation, and the chilling realization that Ben might be gone forever, pressed down on her like a suffocating weight. A new sound cut through the tense silence. A low, rhythmic scraping. It seemed to crawl up the cabin walls, emanating from everywhere and nowhere at once. It felt like nails on a chalkboard, a slow, agonizing torture inflicted on her very soul. Panic clawed at her throat. Her vision began to blur at the edges, the flickering firelight morphing into swirling shadows that danced with grotesque glee. "Let go of me," she managed to gasp out, her voice barely a hoarse whisper. The bony fingers dug deeper into her arm, drawing a sharp cry of pain. Then, with a sickening crack, the voice chuckled. A wet, ragged sound that sent shivers rattling down her spine. "You are ours now, child," the voice rasped. "Just like your brother." The scraping reached a crescendo, a terrifying symphony of bone against wood. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, unable to bear whatever horrors unfolded behind them. A blood-curdling screech pierced the air, different from Ben's scream. This one was inhuman, filled with a raw, primal hunger. The scraping abruptly stopped. A heavy silence descended upon the cabin, thick and oppressive. Slowly, Sarah cracked open an eye. The skeletal hand was gone. In its place, a single long, black fingernail protruded from the floorboards, dripping with something viscous and dark. Panic finally spurred her into action. Adrenaline surged through her, momentarily overriding the terror that threatened to consume her. She ripped her arm free and dashed for the creaking door, her mind screaming for escape. But as she reached for the handle, a wave of dizziness washed over her, threatening to pull her under. The air grew thick and cloying, stealing the breath from her lungs. She stumbled back, collapsing against the rough-hewn wall. Through blurry eyes, she saw the shadows on the wall writhe and twist, coalescing into monstrous forms. Fangs gleamed in the flickering light, eyes burned with an unnatural hunger. A low growl echoed around the room, the sound vibrating in her very bones. The cabin walls seemed to press in on her, the air growing colder, heavier. Sarah knew she was trapped with whatever monstrous entity had claimed Ben, and with her own mounting terror that threatened to break her mind. The screams rose again, a chorus of tormented souls trapped within the whispering pines. As the monstrous forms lunged towards her, teeth bared and eyes glowing with malevolent hunger, Sarah screamed. A primal scream of defiance and terror, a scream that echoed through the haunted cabin and into the heart of the dark, whispering pines. Chapter 4: Whispers Turn to Roars. Sarah's scream echoed through the cabin, a desperate plea lost in the face of overwhelming terror. The monstrous shadows solidified, revealing grotesque creatures with elongated limbs and glowing, malevolent eyes. Saliva dripped from their slavering maws as they lunged towards her, their hunger a tangible presence in the stale air. She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable pain. but it never came. Instead, a deafening roar filled the room, a sound that shook the very foundation of the cabin. The creatures recoiled, their forms flickering and shimmering as if struck by an unseen force. Sarah dared to open one eye, a sliver of hope sparking in her chest. In the flickering firelight, she saw a figure standing in the doorway. It was shrouded in shadow, its form tall and imposing. But unlike the creatures before her, it exuded an aura of raw power, a sense of ancient knowledge and authority. The figure lifted a hand, and the air crackled with unseen energy. The creatures shrieked, their bodies convulsing as if struck by lightning. They writhed on the floor, clawing at the unseen force that held them captive. Sarah watched, transfixed, as the figure effortlessly banished the monsters back into the shadows from which they came. The cabin fell silent, save for the crackling fire and the ragged sound of Sarah's own breathing. The figure turned towards her, and for a fleeting moment, Sarah glimpsed a face beneath the hood. It was a human face, weathered and lined, but the eyes held an ageless wisdom and a flicker of something that resembled pity. "You shouldn't be here, child," the figure rumbled, its voice deep and gravelly, yet strangely calming. "This place is not for the living." Sarah found her voice, a hoarse whisper escaping her parched throat. "Ben? Where's Ben?" The figure remained silent for a moment, the weight of his unseen gaze heavy on her. Then, with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of ages, he spoke. "He is lost, child. Consumed by the whispers. But there might be a way." Hope flared in Sarah's chest, a fragile flame battling the ever-present fear. "What way? Please, I'll do anything." The figure gestured towards the back of the cabin, where a heavy tapestry veiled a section of the wall. "There is a passage, hidden for centuries. It leads deep within these mountains, to a place where the whispers can be silenced." Sarah hesitated, a sliver of doubt flickering in her heart. Could this be a trap? Another trick of this enigmatic figure? But the desperate hope for Ben's salvation outweighed her fear. "What about you?" she asked, her voice gaining strength. "Who are you?" The figure turned away, his form fading into the shadows. "I am the warden," he replied, his voice echoing through the room. "Bound to this place for reasons lost to time. But perhaps, by helping you, I can finally find release." With that, the figure vanished completely, leaving Sarah alone with the flickering fire and a heavy tapestry. The passage offered a desperate chance, a flicker of hope in the face of consuming darkness. It was a gamble, a leap of faith into the unknown. But Sarah knew what she had to do. Taking a deep breath, she steeled herself. She had to face the whispers, had to silence them for good, not just for her own sake, but for Ben's. With newfound determination, she grasped the tapestry, the musty fabric cool against her fingertips. Chapter 5. Whispers Remain. Sarah ripped away the tapestry, revealing a gaping hole in the wall. A cold gust of air, laced with the faint scent of moss and decaying earth, washed over her. Taking a shaky breath, she peered into the darkness. The passage beckoned, a black moor leading into the heart of the mountain. Hesitation gnawed at her, but the image of Ben, lost to the whispers, spurred her forward. With a whispered prayer, she crawled through the opening, the damp earth sucking at her clothes. The tunnel was narrow and oppressive, the air thick and stale. Her heart pounded in her chest, a frantic drum against the silence. After what felt like an eternity, the passage opened into a vast cavern. Glowing crystals, embedded in the cavern walls, cast an eerie blue light, illuminating a sight that sent chills down Sarah's spine. Before her stood a monolithic statue, carved from obsidian. It depicted a monstrous figure, its face contorted in a silent scream. From its open maw, tendrils of inky darkness writhed and pulsed, radiating the chilling whispers that had haunted them throughout their ordeal. The air in the cavern thrummed with an unseen energy. It was the source of the whispers, a malevolent entity imprisoned within the statue. Sarah understood now. This was the heart of the darkness, the place where the whispers had to be silenced. But how? As if sensing her thoughts, a voice echoed through the cavern, distinct from the whispers, yet laced with the same chilling malevolence. "Welcome, child," it rasped. "You have come to free me." Sarah's blood ran cold. This was the entity, trapped within the statue. Fear threatened to paralyze her, but she pushed it down. Ben's life depended on her. The warden's words echoed in her mind, a whisper of hope amidst the cacophony of terror. "Silence, release." Focusing all her energy, Sarah screamed. Not a scream of fear, but a scream of defiance, a will to fight the darkness. Her scream echoed through the cavern, resonating with the whispers, competing with them for dominance. Slowly, a change began. The tendrils of darkness wavered, their glow dimming. The whispers grew fainter, losing their power against the force of Sarah's will. With a final, ear-splitting shriek, the tendrils retracted into the statue, the darkness within it fading away. Silence descended upon the cavern, a heavy, oppressive silence that felt alien after the constant barrage of whispers. Sarah collapsed to her knees, drained. Then, from the depths of the cave, a groan echoed. It was weak, barely audible, but it was Ben's voice. Sarah scrambled to her feet, hope surging through her. She found him in a crevice at the base of the statue, unconscious but alive. Relief washed over her, so intense it brought tears to her eyes. But as they emerged from the cavern, the world they stepped back into was not the same. The mountains, once shrouded in twilight, now seemed darker, their shadows deeper. The wind that howled through the pines carried a faint echo of the whispers, a chilling reminder of the darkness they had faced. They had escaped, but the experience had irrevocably changed them. Sarah knew the whispers would never truly fade, a constant reminder of the horror they had encountered. However, as she and Ben walked away, arms linked, they carried a newfound strength. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. The whispers remained, but they no longer held power over them.